The film begins with a real estate agent named Rick Carver being interviewed by the police. It turns out Rick was the last person to see Mr. Caldwell, the man who shot himself. Rick tells the officers that as soon as Caldwell saw him, he went inside his house and pulled the trigger. Rick works for the bank, handling foreclosures on properties whose owners defaulted on their loans. The man who took his own life was one of those about to be evicted, except, instead of being kicked out of his house, he evicted himself from life. Rick shows absolutely no emotion while explaining this to the police. He's a cold, detached man with little empathy. Next, we meet Dennis Nash, a construction worker and single father struggling through financial hardship. He owes the bank around $80,000, and his family is on the verge of losing their home. Dennis goes to court to plead his case, but the judge grants him only 30 days to file a formal appeal. On the way home, he tries to comfort his son Connor, assuring him not to worry, that they won't lose the house. But deep down, Dennis is terrified for his son's future. He starts searching desperately for work, calling everyone he can, answering ads, applying anywhere possible, but finds nothing. Things get worse the next day when a group of sheriffs arrive at his house with Rick. They inform Dennis that the bank has officially seized the property and that his family must leave immediately. Dennis protests, saying the court gave him 30 days to appeal, but Rick counters with a court order signed by a judge requiring them to vacate at once. Rick also offers a $3,500 cash for keys deal from the bank if they agree to leave peacefully. It would buy them some extra time to move out, but Dennis and his mother refuse. Their resistance quickly escalates into a confrontation with the officers, who warn that they'll be arrested if they don't comply. Reluctantly, Dennis and his family begin packing their belongings. When Connor returns from school, he sees his family being thrown out of their home. He's devastated but powerless to stop it. The family says goodbye to their neighbors and moves into a motel. There, Dennis's mother Lynn suggests moving to Tampa to stay with an uncle, but Dennis refuses. Leaving would mean uprooting Connor from his school and friends. Desperate to provide for his family, Dennis starts looking for any kind of work. The next day, he gets into a fight with a man named Jeff, who accuses him of stealing his tools. During the argument, Rick shows up and tells the workers he has a new job. He asks Dennis to come along, offering him $50. They head to a house that's been flooded with sewage, the stench unbearable. When everyone else refuses to do it, Dennis negotiates with Rick to clean the mess for $250. He even offers drinks and fair pay to other workers to help him. They manage to get the job done, and in the next scene, Dennis arrives at a large luxury mansion, Rick's home. Rick calls him over to fix his air conditioning. After Dennis finishes, Rick takes him for a drive and offers him a job. Dennis accepts without even asking what kind of work it is. While driving, they spot a house illegally siphoning power and water from another. Upon investigation, Rick realizes it's a foreclosed property owned by the bank. He calls the homeowner, Frank Green, and tells him to remove the illegal pipes immediately. While working, Frank tells Dennis that their sons go to the same school. He also confesses that he lost his job 2 years ago and has been struggling to pay his mortgage ever since. Afterward, Frank apologizes for stealing, and Rick warns him not to do it again. Later, Rick and Dennis visit a high-end property where Rick instructs Dennis to remove luxury cabinets and decor for reuse in another home. When the job is done, Rick pays Dennis $3,250 and offers him a permanent position at his company. At first, Dennis is hesitant, but with no other options, he accepts. Over time, he begins working for Rick Carver Realty, where he helps carry out home evictions, remove valuables from foreclosed properties, and post eviction notices. Sometimes, he even faces threats from those being thrown out. One day, Rick and Dennis count the air conditioning units and pool pumps Dennis has collected from the evicted homes. Rick explains that the government reimburses the same amount needed to replace them, guaranteeing profit, and assures Dennis of his share. He also asks Dennis to locate empty homes around the city and fill them with fake tenants so they can collect settlement money from the banks. A few days later, Rick hands Dennis a check for $7,200, his share of their profits. But Dennis refuses the money and instead asks Rick to help him buy back his house. Without hesitation, Rick agrees to purchase it from the bank under Dennis's name, but makes it clear that Dennis will still owe him the remaining balance. Hearing this, Dennis is overjoyed to finally get his house back and thanks his boss for the help. However, his boss then tells him that today is the eviction day for Mr. Tanner's house and he wants Dennis to come and observe the process. Not only does Dennis accompany Rick, but he also decides to carry out the eviction himself. He evicts Mr. and Mrs. Tanner from their home. The couple tries to resist, but Dennis still goes through with it. He feels guilty and offers his help, but they reject him, saying that he disgusts them. In the next scene, we see Dennis and his family traveling to an unknown location. Of course, Dennis knows where they're going, but his family doesn't. He stops the car in front of their old house, unlocks the door, and they all walk inside. Connor and Lynn are shocked and confused, wondering what's going on. Dennis tells them that they're going to move back into the house in a few weeks. Connor gets excited and immediately runs to his old room. Dennis's mother asks how he managed to make it happen, and Dennis explains that his employer bought the house for him and that he's gradually repaying it in installments. But the story doesn't end there. Dennis also starts evicting many other families from their homes, and it begins to take a toll on his mental health. He completely breaks down after evicting an elderly couple without even knowing why they were being kicked out. The more families he evicts, the heavier his guilt becomes, yet at the same time, he becomes Rick's favorite employee. One day, they meet a man named Mr. Freeman who wants to entrust them with the management of over 1,000 homes. However, there's a catch. Freeman wants someone to keep an eye on Ortiz, a man who's been selling houses. Rick assigns Dennis to watch him. Dennis discovers that Ortiz has sold 100 houses to a group, 15 of which have already been sold. Upon learning this, Dennis comes up with a plan to steal all the electronic appliances from those 15 homes so that the group will lose trust in Ortiz. In the next scene, Dennis is celebrating his son's birthday in a motel. But his happiness doesn't last long when a family he had previously evicted spots him. A man from that family confronts him, calls him out, and although Dennis tries to pretend he doesn't recognize him, the man knows exactly who he is. They end up fighting. Connor, Dennis's son, witnesses everything and becomes very upset. Dennis has now gone too deep into this mess. He tells himself that he'll keep evicting people until he can finally get his house back. Later, Dennis meets with a group of people including Kahana. They discuss the failed deal with Ortiz, which turns out to have fallen apart because of the missing appliances from the 15 houses Ortiz sold to the group. Rick offers to replace all the missing appliances for free if the group agrees to transfer the contract to him. Kahana is impressed by the offer and accepts it. This, of course, was Rick's plan all along. Rick celebrates the success by throwing a party at his house. As the party winds down, Rick and Dennis sit by the pool and talk. All Dennis can think about is his house. He just wants to get it back, bring his family home, and live a normal life again. Rick tells him it'll take a few more weeks, but Dennis seems impatient. Rick suggests that he could just buy another house since he's already made a lot of money. Dennis takes the advice and buys a luxurious new house for his family. However, to his surprise, Dennis's mother and Connor hate the idea. They refuse to live there because they know the money used to buy it came from evicting countless innocent families. Lynn, his mother, tells Dennis that she would rather go live with her brother in Tampa. Dennis wants to come with her, but she refuses. Dennis is devastated. The next morning, Rick calls Dennis into his office and hands him a fabricated document targeting a man named Frank Green, someone fighting to keep his home. Rick emphasizes that if Frank wins the case, the deal between him and the Vice Investment Group will fall through. Therefore, Dennis must make sure Frank loses. When Dennis arrives at court to submit the fake document, he sees Frank and his family looking hopeful, believing they'll win. Dennis hesitates to hand it over, but Rick pressures him. Eventually, Dennis gives in, and Frank loses his home. That night, when Dennis returns home, he finds the house empty. His entire family has left him. Heartbroken, he gets drunk and falls asleep on the porch. The next morning, he's awakened because it's the day of Frank Green's eviction. He goes with Rick to witness it. When they arrive, the police are questioning the neighbors. They say Frank is usually a calm man, but lately, he's been having problems with his wife. The police are there because of a domestic disturbance call, and they warn that Frank is armed and dangerous. When the police tell him to drop his gun, Frank starts shooting and shouting that the court wasn't fair and that his home was taken illegally. Dennis, who's hiding behind a car, finally steps out and tells Frank that the house actually belongs to him. He's the one who forged the court documents. Upon hearing this, Frank surrenders to the police, and his family is rescued. The police then question Dennis about why he's there. He tells them he came to evict Frank and points to Rick as his boss. Rick initially praises Dennis for what he did, but it's clear he's furious. Dennis cries inside the car, full of regret. In the final scene, Frank's son looks at Dennis from the window with a face full of gratitude, because, for the first time, Dennis told the truth, and a family was spared from being wrongfully evicted, and with that the story ends here.